There's a face in every flame I light. My grandmother's name was Vera, but everyone called her Nana, except me. I never called her Nana. It wasn't because I disliked it or felt too old to call her by that pet name. I simply never thought of it. You see, I didn't grow up with my grandmother. She had raised me from when I was 2 years old after my parents died, but not in a conventional way. She didn't take me into her home and care for me there. Instead, she left me with an orphanage run by nuns in northern Poland. I have no idea why she did that, but when I asked her about it, she would always change the subject. It's just easier this way, she'd say, before rushing off to one of her many appointments. I rarely saw my grandmother. The only time I can remember her taking me out of the orphanage was when she brought me to a log cabin in the forest to meet my father's brother. My uncle, he lived there alone and had for as long as I could remember. As a kid, I was fascinated by him because he seemed so different from other people. He wore a thick mustache and beard that hid most of his face. His eyes were sunken deep into his hair, and he always smelled like fresh pine and wood smoke. Even though he said very little, I could tell he liked me because he would bring me fish from his fishing boat on the lake nearby and tell me stories about giants who used to live in those woods. I have hazy memories of my grandmother visiting me at the orphanage once or twice a year. We would go somewhere together, usually for medical appointments since I suffered from asthma. When I started school, she took me to buy my first set of clothes, shoes, and books. That was the only time I ever got new things. At home, I had to wear hand-me-downs from older kids, and all my toys were well used. Throughout my childhood, my grandmother always seemed in a hurry. Even when we were together, it felt like she was holding on to my time like it was slipping through her fingers. She would look at me with sad eyes and say, "You don't know how precious time is. One day you will." Then she would leave again, either to go back to her cabin or to whatever else she had going on. I learned early on that I couldn't count on her for anything. If she promised to visit me on Saturday, I knew there was a good chance she wouldn't show up, so I never made plans around her visits. And if she did come, I would hide my disappointment and try to be a good kid. As I grew older, I wanted her to be more involved in my life, but I also understood that wasn't possible. I had a deep-seated longing for her love, but it felt impossible to get it. There were times when I came close, like when I told her about winning first place in a national math competition, but she still only had kind words and a pat on the shoulder before rushing away again. By the time I turned 16, I had given up hope of getting any kind of relationship with my grandmother. I saw her as an abstract idea of family, a symbolic figure whose absence defined me in some ways. I mean, how could someone be so forgetful? How could she not recognize the importance of building a relationship with her own granddaughter? Then one day, when I was 16, everything changed. My grandmother came to the orphanage for their annual Christmas party. I watched from afar as she walked into the room, looking elegant in a black dress and red high heels. Her silver hair cascaded down her shoulders like a waterfall. Her face was beautiful, even though it was lined with wrinkles that told stories of laughter and sadness. Something about her presence made everyone stop and stare. That evening, when I received my presents, I noticed a small box waiting for me under the tree. It contained a necklace with a silver pendant shaped like a bird in flight. On the back, it had the initials VM engraved. I realized then that the V stood for Vera, my grandmother's name, and the M was for me. Tears welled up in my eyes as I slipped it around my neck. I had never received such a thoughtful gift before, and it meant so much coming from her. Later that night, when everyone had gone home, Sister Mary approached me. "Your grandmother would like to see you," she said softly. My heart skipped a beat. Was this the moment I had been waiting for? The chance to finally connect with her? I nodded dumbly, unable to speak. Sister Mary smiled understandingly and led me through the dark corridors to the chapel. There in the flickering candlelight sat my grandmother. The room was empty except for us. She looked up as I entered and beckoned me closer. I knelt down next to her. And suddenly she reached out, taking my hands between hers. They were soft and warm, and I felt an overwhelming urge to tell her everything. all the unspoken words I had carried for so long. Why did you never want me? I blurted out. My voice echoed in the silence. My grandmother's gaze dropped to our intertwined hands, and a single tear rolled down her cheek. Oh, my sweet child, she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. If only you knew how much I wanted to, but I couldn't risk it. Just then, she let out a sharp gasp, as if struck by a sudden memory. It's your father's fault, she continued, her voice trembling. He never understood why I chose you, but I had to protect you. At that moment, everything became clear to me. My grandmother hadn't chosen to abandon me. She had been forced to. But what did that mean? Why had my father sent her away? And what was she protecting me from? Before I could ask more questions, my grandmother stiffened, as if remembering herself. She quickly composed herself and said, "You should go now. Good night, my darling." She pressed a kiss to my forehead, and I could feel the warmth of her body, the scent of her perfume. It was the closest I'd ever been to her, and it made me crave more. However, I knew better than to push her, so I nodded obediently and returned to the orphanage that night. I couldn't sleep. Thoughts raced through my mind, leaving me even more confused and hurt. Why had my father sent my grandmother away? What had happened to our family? And why did my grandmother still love me despite giving me away? Days turned into weeks, and I found myself constantly thinking about my grandmother. I wanted to know more about her, about our family history, and most of all, about my father. Who was he, and why had he hurt my grandmother and me? One day, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I needed answers. So I went to see my grandmother. The moment I arrived, I could tell something was different. Her usual elegance had been replaced by a simple cotton dress and shawl. Her silver hair was tied back, revealing a delicate gold chain around her neck. On it hung a small oval locket. I'd never seen it before. "Can I ask you something?" I began hesitating. "Of course, darling," she replied, her gaze fixed on the locket. "What is it? Who sent me to the orphanage? Why did you want me?" A shadow passed over her face, and she quickly composed herself. "Your father did," she said softly. "He thought it wasn't good enough for you. He wanted more for his son." I stared at her in disbelief. "But you're my grandmother." "Of course he wanted you to raise me." She shook her head slowly. "No, darling, your father was wrong. I wasn't fit to be a mother then. Her voice cracked, and tears glistened in her eyes. "What do you mean? What happened?" I pressed, reaching out to touch her arm. She flinched slightly, as if startled by my sudden movement. Then she sighed and looked away. "It doesn't matter now," she murmured. "The past is in the past. What's important is that we have each other now." Despite her reassurances, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something from me. Her cryptic answers and evasive behavior only fueled my desire to uncover the truth. I wanted to understand why she had been unfit to raise me and what had changed. Determined to find answers, I decided to visit my uncle at his log cabin. Maybe he would know more about our family history and why my father had made that decision. Plus, I wanted to tell him about my gift from Grandma. I thought he might share some insights into its meaning. As I approached the cabin, the familiar scent of pine and wood smoke filled my senses. A wave of nostalgia washed over me, bringing back memories of my childhood visits. I knocked on the wooden door, and moments later, my uncle opened it. His face broke into a wide smile, revealing a dimple in his left cheek. "Come in! Come in!" he boomed, ushering me inside. "How wonderful to see you! It's been far too long." I stepped into the cozy cabin and noticed that it hadn't changed much since I was a child. The same wood stove sat in the corner, and a worn leather sofa was nestled beside the window. An array of fishing trophies adorned the walls, each telling a tale of a catch from the nearby lake. "Can I help you with something?" my uncle asked, his voice echoing the warmth of the crackling fire. "Actually, yes," I replied. "I wanted to show you this." I reached for the necklace and showed it to him. It was a gift from Grandma. My uncle's smile faded, and a shadow of sadness crossed his face. "Ah, yes," he murmured, staring at the silver pendant. "A reminder of what could have been." I tilted my head in confusion. "What do you mean?" He let out a heavy sigh and sank into a nearby chair. "Your grandmother was different once," he began, his voice low and somber. "She was full of life, adventurous and kind. She loved this forest, these woods, and dreamed of living here one day." My uncle's gaze drifted towards the window, as if seeing the cabin not as it was, but as it had been in his memories. "She met your father when he was visiting from Warsaw," he continued. "They fell in love, and soon she became pregnant. But as the baby grew, so did her isolation. She spent less and less time with us, withdrawing into herself. Then one day she left, abandoning both your father and her dream of the forest." I stared at my uncle in disbelief. This wasn't the story my grandmother had told me. In her version, my father had sent me to the orphanage because he believed my grandmother wasn't good enough for me. But according to my uncle, it had been the other way around. My grandmother had left my father and me behind to pursue our dreams alone. Sensing my confusion, my uncle cleared his throat and added, "Your father was devastated." He blamed himself for not being able to save her from leaving. He carried that guilt until his death. With each word, my perception of my family shifted, revealing a tangled web of love, loss, and regret. I grappled with the realization that none of them had acted with ill intent, but rather had been driven by their own pain and desires. My thoughts raced, trying to piece together the fragmented story. Why had my grandmother left? What had caused her to abandon my father and me? I longed to ask her directly, but the thought of confronting her with these questions filled me with dread. Would she even answer, or would she retreat further into her enigmatic silence? As the day drew to a close, I found myself standing at the edge of the forest. The towering trees loomed over me, their branches forming a dense canopy that blocked the sunlight. I had come to this place seeking answers, yet I had only uncovered more questions. My grandmother's past remained shrouded in mystery, her reasons for leaving unclear. As darkness enveloped me, I realized the weight of the secrets that lay dormant within our family. Each generation had carried their pain and regrets, shaping me into the person I am today. Suddenly, a twig snapped behind me, and I whirled around, my heart pounding in my chest. There in the fading light stood my grandmother. Her face was etched with concern, her eyes searching mine. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered, my voice trembling with emotion. "Tell you what?" she replied, her gaze unwavering. "About my father," I said, my voice catching in my throat. "About what happened? About why you left him?" My grandmother's shoulders slumped slightly, and she looked away, her fingers twisting in her shawl. "I'm sorry," she murmured, her voice heavy with remorse. "I thought it was best to protect you from the pain of knowing, but I was wrong." She turned back to face me, her eyes glistening with tears. "Your father loved you so much," she said softly. "He spoke of you often, wondering how you were and hoping you were happy." My heart clenched at her words. Despite the unanswered questions, I felt a sense of solace knowing that my father had carried the memory of me in his heart. As the forest grew darker, I realized it was time to go. I hugged my grandmother, burying my face in her shawl, inhaling the familiar scent of wood smoke and lavender. In that moment, I forgave her for leaving, for not being there when I needed her. I understood that she had acted out of love, albeit misguided, and that we were bound by a shared love for my father. When I pulled away from the hug, I saw a faint smile on my grandmother's face. "I'm glad we found each other," she whispered. "Even if it's too late, it's not too late for us to be a family now." Her words echoed in my ears as I walked away, guiding me through the darkness and giving me hope for the future. Though our past was marred by regret and loss, I knew we had the chance to create new memories and forge a bond that would last a lifetime.